King David had throughout the Old Testament, while Saul was chasing him, trying to kill him, and Saul was king, but also when David was king, he had 300 mighty men. That's what they were called. Mighty men who were at the heart of his security team, his protection system. These are the names of David's mightiest warriors. The first was Joshua, who was leader of the three mightiest warriors among David's men. He once used his spear to kill 800 enemies in a single battle. Wow. Abishai was the leader of the 30. He once used his spear to kill 300 enemy warriors in a single battle. It was by such feats that he became famous, or as famous, as the three. And then there was another one to remain. His name was Banaya. Banaya. There was also Banaya, a valiant warrior from Kabzeel. He did many heroic deeds, which included killing 2 champions of Moab. Now, the only person I've ever heard of in the world named Banaya is right here. Never had a Banaya in the nursery here at church, or 37, 38 years here, I've never had a Banaya in the nursery. Had a lot of Davids and Daniels and Joshuas and Matthews, but not any Banayas. It's kind of an unusual name, and it probably should keep its designation, because nobody I know was like this. He did many heroic deeds, which included killing 2 champions of Moab. Another time, on a snowy day, he chased a lion down into a pit and killed it. Only armed with a club, he killed an imposing Egyptian warrior who was armed with a spear. Banaya wrenched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with it. Deeds like these made Banaya as famous as the 3 mightiest warriors. So you got 300 mighty men who protect David, but there are 3 that stand out above all others. And then there's a 4th one, as famous as the 3, Banaya. And the reason I'm focusing upon him today is because he chased a lion down into a pit and killed it. Have you ever heard of such a thing? He chased a lion. Not the lion chased him, like in Tarzan or something. He chased the lion. And later on in 2 Samuel, in chapter 23, it says, he was more honored than the other members of the 30, although he was not one of the 3, and David made him the captain of his bodyguard. Now that's the position Joab used to have. It was the highest rank possible in David's security team. And I think it's because he chased a lion down into a pit. Seriously? It's like the joke I heard about one time about a man who was chased by a lion, and he came to a cliff, so he had no way to escape. It was either the cliff or it was the lion, and so he thought, I don't have any other option other than to pray. Isn't that what we sometimes do? We get to a point, well, the only thing left to do is pray, rather than the first thing we should do is pray. And he got to the point, and he got to the edge of the cliff, and he said, the only thing I can do is pray. And he said, Lord, I just pray that this is a Christian lion. And he opened his eyes, and the lion was bowed down right before him with his paws crossed, and the lion was praying. And he thought, I have found the only Christian lion in the world. Except the lion was praying, Lord, I thank you for this food I am about to receive. By the way, that makes the lion a whole lot more spiritual than many of you. But anyway, I don't care if you boo. Do you think I care at this point in my life? And so our text says Banaya went into the pit and the lion was already there. In other words, the lion wasn't stalking Banaya. Banaya was stalking the lion. You know what? Too many of us let the lion, the devil, walks about, 1 Peter 5:8 says, as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Too many of us let the lion stalk us. What made Banaya great, and so David promoted him to the highest position in his army, was Banaya wasn't waiting on the roaring lion to stalk him. He went after the lion. You are going to have some lions in your life. You may have one right now. Are you going to let it stalk you into faithlessness and depression and anxiety and disappointment and anger and unbelief? Or are you going to stalk the lion? And so I just want to leave you with some very quick thoughts this morning. Your greatest opportunities are often disguised as obstacles. There are two kinds of challenges you face in life. Human-sized challenges are those things that they may be tough, but you can handle them on your own. A God-sized challenge is one that simply cannot be faced without the miraculous power of God. Now, my first question is, why would Banaya kill a lion? There was no hunting for sport back then. So it had to be for one of several reasons. Maybe this lion was killing livestock, and it posed a danger to people and animals. And if it killed livestock, it was taking away their food supply. Or it could be that since this was during a time when food was not very plentiful, Banaya did it to feed his fellow soldiers, because even 500 pounds of tough lion steak would go a long way toward feeding a hungry army. And I'm also intrigued by the words that were added to stalking this lion. And that is that it was on a snowy day. You see, snow makes the ground slippery and would give a four-legged, low to the ground, low center of gravity animal like a lion much more traction than a two-legged man. So Banaya is facing seemingly insurmountable odds. Men don't generally win in one-on-one combat with a lion. They just don't. Lions can run with bursts of speed up to 40 miles an hour. Lions can jump 30 feet into the air. Lions' eyesight is 5 times stronger than a man's. It's a mismatch. The snow makes it a bigger mismatch. A lion can, and we know this, we've seen it in the news not too long ago, a lion can crush a human skull with one slap of his paw, and his jaws are powerful enough to bite through any bone in the human body. Lions are scary animals, even at the zoo. And so as I was studying this passage and thinking about it, I was thinking, you know, what a great scene this would be from the Bible to make a movie or a TV series from, the story of Banaya, and particularly this scene of Banaya tracking the lion through the snow. The camera would be above Banaya as he creeps through the snow with a spear in his hand. And ahead of him, you would see maybe 100 yards ahead, the lion slowly but powerfully making his way toward his den. And you watch from above, kind of drone-like today, this stalking. And you see the lion disappear into a pit. And Banaya walks to the edge, and because he's a crafty warrior, he takes a rock and tosses it into the pit. And suddenly comes out a massive roar from the lion to try to scare Banaya. And Banaya is this incredible warrior as we've just read about. And so as he sneaks toward the opening of the pit, maybe he lets out some sort of a warrior cry. I think it may have gone something like this. Oh, oh. For those of you who know what I just referenced, God bless you. For those who don't, God help you. But maybe he let out some kind of a warrior cry. And along with the scream of the warrior, there's the ear-splitting roar of a beast. And then you see Banaya go into the pit. Who would do such a thing? And you don't see the battle. If I'm making the film, you don't see the battle. You just hear it. You hear these incredible sounds coming from the pit. You hear flesh tearing. And most people would expect the lion to jump out with the man in his mouth, but instead Banaya climbs out bleeding and wounded, but victorious. A picture, an image of how Jesus came out of the tomb, bleeding and hurt, but victorious. A picture of what our salvation in Christ should look like. We take some shots, we take some hits, but we come out with victory in Jesus. Champions for Christ. You see, that which appeared to Banaya as a scary lion turned out to be the basis of his reputation and his success. And so David said, that's the guy I want leading my army, because life's greatest opportunities often come disguised as God-sized challenges. What kind of fearful lion are you facing right now? You're standing at the edge of a dark pit that's real, and you want to turn and run. Maybe you or someone you love just got the diagnosis of the C word. You may be scared because with rising prices, you're running out of money before you run out of month. Maybe you're afraid because you're in a family that outwardly seems perfect, but inwardly it's not. It's dysfunctional. Do you seem to be facing some sort of impossible odds right now? Don't be afraid. There is a God in heaven who gives strength to those who are willing to track a lion on a snowy day into a pit and trust that God will bring you out okay. Your greatest opportunities may be disguised as obstacles. And then your greatest fear to conquer is the fear of failure. Mine is. I'm much more afraid of failure than I am. I fear losing much more than I enjoy winning. And I think most people are that way. I'm much more afraid of failure than I am of the effort. And I think most people are that way. In order to kill the lion, Banaya had to face and conquer his fear. I don't think he was calm or nonchalant when he jumped down into a pit, do you? I think his heart was probably pounding like a jackhammer and thoughts were just coursing through his mind. But he simply exercised his faith to jump in spite of his fears. And he trusted that God would overcome his fears with faith. You know, at some point or another, all of us have to learn how to overcome our fear. We do. Psychologists who have studied fear, I wish I could have made that bigger. Psychologists who have studied fear report that infants are only born with two basic fears. Did you know this? Infants are only born with two basic fears: the fear of loud noises and the fear of falling. So babies, fear of loud noises, most of us have experienced that, and the fear of falling. And I think the parents have that fear about as much as the baby does. Every other fear we have at some point or another is a learned fear. Every other fear is a learned fear. And there are hundreds of them, hundreds of phobias, all the way alphabetically from ablutophobia, which is the fear of washing or bathing. I hope you don't have that. To xenophobia, which is the fear of jealousy. But here's the good thing. If these fears can be learned, guess what? They can be unlearned. You can unlearn anything that you learn. I've watched many people who were not believers become the most faithful believers. They were unlearned. They became learned. Anybody can do this. But half of learning is unlearning. Unfortunately, unlearning is twice as hard as learning. It's like missing your exit out here on I-75. You miss the exit, you got to drive up to the next exit, in some instances 6, 8, 10 miles away, and then double back. It's twice as hard, in other words. When you face down a fear, you're ready for the next one. Eleanor Roosevelt quotes, a couple of quotes are really good right here. She said, "You gain strength and courage and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I have lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you cannot do." It's unlearning what you've learned. That's what she's saying. If you want fear to be conquered by faith, you will have to unlearn the fears that you've learned. She went on and said, "We do not have to become heroes overnight. Just a step at a time, meeting each thing that comes up, seeing it not as dreadful as it appears, discovering that we have the strength to stare it down." You're able to say to yourself, I lived through the horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You see, the two biggest fears that most of us have and that hold most of us back are what I would call FOF and FOP. FOF and FOP. FOF is the fear of failure. FOP is the fear of people. So many people are held back in faith by either a fear of what people may say or people may think or people may do, or they are held back by a fear of failure. And the only way you overcome fear is by facing it head on, one at a time, unlearning it, and going straight into the pit, like Banaya did. And then there's another last takeaway truth that I want you all to understand, and that is, your greatest joys in life will come from your faith defeating fear, from you not just singing, "Rescue me from the wicked," but doing something to let God help rescue you from the wicked. The Bible never tells us how many possessions Banaya accumulated. Instead, we're just told about his mighty exploits, his extraordinary experiences. But if I were making the movie again, I know how I'd film him getting to the peak of his career, Joab's old job, David's primary military commander and general. I can just picture King David sorting through the resumes for a personal bodyguard, and one says, well, I majored in security at the University of Jerusalem. And another one says, well, I worked for Brick's armored chariots. And another one said, I ripped a spear from an Egyptian giant warrior, and I tracked a lion on a snowy day into a pit, and I killed that lion. And David said, I'll take him. I'll take him. Have you ever considered that God sometimes allows you to go through some tough challenges because He is simply building your spiritual resume? He is building your faith, your confidence. He is helping you use your faith to overcome your fear. Well, I think that's indicated in so many of the heroes and champions of the Bible. Every lion you go after is preparing you for bigger and better challenges. Every victory that faith brings you is another defeat for fear. And so 1 Peter 5:8 says, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. You think that bothered Banaya? No, because the next verse says, resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings. Resist him. Rescue me from the wicked. Rescue me from the devil, the roaring lion, seeking me to devour. That's how fear overcomes faith. Now, most of you came in here today and you say, well, I don't know. I'm not sure I'm that kind of person. I don't have that kind of personality. I'm a little shaky. I'm not sure I could possibly live that way. How many of you, when you came in here today, had never heard the name Banaya? Raise your hand. Oh. So in other words, he wasn't such a big, well-known champion superstar. He was just a guy like you. Mark Twain once wrote, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, discover. He's so right. Almost everybody in the latter years of their life, they're more disappointed by the things they didn't do than by the things they did. And they're more disappointed by the faith they didn't exercise than by the faith they could have used. That's why Banaya is such a great, great example for us. So a couple of years ago, I watched the World War II series Band of Brothers that's based on Stephen Ambrose's great book of the same title. And it's the story about the paratroopers of Easy Company who jumped behind German lines on D-Day, and Easy Company experienced a casualty rate of almost 50%. So just count it. Flip a coin, whether you live or die. These champions demonstrated all three of these lessons we've talked about this morning. They interviewed some of the survivors of the greatest generation, and they said they never realized at the moment that what they were doing would be the greatest challenge they ever faced in their entire life. I think many times we don't realize that while we're in the midst of it. They never realized it would be the greatest challenge they ever faced in their life, and everyone said they were scared to death. They were afraid, but they had to overcome their fears. And once they were told that they were surrounded by Germans, and one of them started to say, "Oh no, what is our next step? What will we do?" And another one shouted over him, "We're paratroopers. We're supposed to be surrounded." And it became the rallying cry for Easy Company. These men of Easy Company were part of 53,000 unsung, unknown champions, Banayas, who ran straight toward their fears on D-Day and pushed back an evil empire. And today, when you stand in the fields overlooking the beach, you see 9,387 grave markers of young champions who laid down their lives for their country and for their friends, for their fellow soldiers, and for us to be able to sit here today 70 years later and do what we do, have freedom of speech and freedom of worship. In the band of brothers, the surviving soldiers who are now almost all gone, there are a handful in their mid to late 90s, talked about the experience of being with their fellow soldiers in tough times and recall them as the most cherished memories of their lives. What? 1 out of 2 of you were dying? You were scared to death? But the times with our brothers are the most cherished memories of our lives. Oh, that we understood that playing it safe, taking it easy, looking for a life of comfort and ease and convenience is virtueless. That being banded together as a band of brothers, a tribe, a group of people called Christians who will face down fear and will track down a lion on a snowy day into a pit if necessary in order to have victory and overcome is available to all of us. And it is the greatest memory we will ever have in our life. As you walk with God, you will face a few roaring lions. May you have the resolve and the strength and the power of the indwelling Holy Spirit within you to say, I am going to walk by faith and not by sight. I am not going to let the roaring lion who seeks to devour me destroy me. I am, by the power of Jesus, going to crush his head through faith and obedience to God and being a part of the winning side, just like Jesus did. In other words, I'm going to be a Banaya or a Bonita. Would you bow with me?